Hello, this is Domenico with Easynomics, and we're going to continue our discussion of elasticity, particularly YED. And the example we're going to use in this case is Spain, and we're going to be looking at falling income and what happens to demand for normal and inferior goods. So in the previous example, we are looking at rising income in Singapore. And in this case, we're looking at falling income. And here we can see the impact of the 2008 economic crisis. Now, from 2002 to 2008, you can see there's really a sharp increase in gross national income per capita in Spain. Perhaps this was a result of the real estate boom. This is the lead up to the 2008 economic crisis. Interest rates were low by the central bank and retail banks. So a lot of people were borrowing and buying apartments, housing. A lot of Europeans coming to Spain, and perhaps Americans and other people from developed nations and developing nations, perhaps the wealthy groups in those nations coming to Spain and buying secondary residences or summer homes or retirement homes. And that led to a big boom in their construction industry and real estate industry and led to further increases in GDP. But unfortunately, we see that the 2008 crisis drove Spain into a recession from 2008 approximately going to 2017, where it started to recover. We see GNI per capita income rising, but then unfortunately the COVID pandemic will bring it back down. So we're going to be looking at this period from 2008 to 2017, that fall in per capita income. So YED, income elasticity of demand, it is the percent change in quantity demanded divided by the percent change in income. And in this case, we're going to assume that income is falling, all right? So we're going to be using this graph for measuring quantity of goods and services in Spain that are demanded, the price of those goods, and then there's a third variable, income, which we're assuming is going to be falling. So we'll start off with demand for goods and services, approximately, let's put it right around here. We're at D1. And incomes begins to fall, right, from 2008 to 2017, I think was the year. Let me just double check that. It was, 2017 approximately. Incomes are falling. So what happens for the demand for inferior goods during this time period? Well, we're going to assume that the demand for inferior goods is rising. So it has increased from D1 to D2. Times are tough. People are not able to afford normal goods, so they're switching to inferior goods. So demand increases for inferior goods. Perhaps at the supermarket, people are refraining from buying name brand goods and switching to generic brands, or in Spain we call them marca blanca. So YED in this case, YED would have a value that's less than 0, which means that as the income is falling, the demand is rising. We have a positive number divided by a negative number. That's going to give us a negative value. So YED is less than 0, so it is an inferior good. As incomes continue to fall, what happens to demand for normal goods that are necessities? Well, it's decreasing from D1 to, let's say, D2 or D3. So demand for normal goods that are necessities has decreased because instead people are switching over to the inferior goods to cover their necessities. In this case, YED has a value between 0 and 1. All right, so YED is less than 1, but greater than 0. And here we see that income is falling and the demand is also falling. Okay. So income is falling, demand is falling. So we have a negative value divided by a negative value gives us a positive. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. In this case, greater than 1, but less. Less than 1, but greater than 0. So this is a necessity good or service. Okay, and it's a normal good. As incomes continue to fall, what happens to demand for luxury goods? It also decreases. So decreases from D1 to D4. Right, so we have that demand suddenly decreasing rapidly for luxury goods. Times are tough. People are going to forego their luxury goods to survive. And so demand decreases D1 to D4. So here we're looking at luxury goods and services. Okay. And then we also want to highlight that this entire area here from D1 to D4 is covering the normal goods. Okay, versus the inferior goods. All right, so again, we have income falling, demand falling for necessities and luxuries. Negative divide by negative gives us a positive number, so we're going to get a value that is greater than 0, a positive figure. And I forgot to mention that YED for luxury goods is greater than 1. Okay. So let's go ahead and analyze this as we would for a paper exam. As can be seen, we have a model, a graph illustrating the market for goods and services in Spain, labeled graph A. We're measuring the quantity of goods demanded on the x-axis and the price of those goods on the y-axis. And there is a third variable that we're taking into account, and that is income. And we're going to assume that income is falling from 2008 to 2007. That's GNI per capita income for Spain. As income is falling during this recession period within the Spanish economy, demand for inferior goods increases from D1 to D2. That provides a YED value that is less than 0 or negative. That's a result of the negative causal relationship between income and the quantity demanded. So again, we're assuming that income is falling, but demand is rising. So there we have positive divided by negative gives us a negative value. Thus, YED is less than 0. Okay. As incomes continue to fall, demand for necessities that are normal goods decreases from D1 to D3. That provides a YED value between 0 and 1. It is a positive number because income is falling, but the quantity demanded for normal goods is also falling. Thus, we have a negative value divided by a negative value gives us a positive number. So YED is greater than 0. As incomes continue to fall, demand for luxury goods decreases from D1 to D4. Here, YED is greater than 1. So if YED, for example, for going to restaurants was 4, say 4.5, that's 4.5 over 1. That means that as incomes fell by 1%, demand for restaurants fell by 4.5%. So some dramatic decrease in the demand for those luxury goods. Okay, so that would be a way to explain and analyze income elasticity, in this case falling income, and what happens to demand for inferior and normal goods. And that's it. Thank you so much. And don't forget to subscribe and like. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment.